Hey there, people. My long exile from streaming continues. Which I have to say, as much as I love streaming, and I do, being off sick feels as good now as it does, well, as it did back when I was in school. I'm not even wearing pants right now. I mean, the camera cuts off here, but yeah. um, you see the title. I normally talk about American news in this country, because well, I'm American. It's easier to consume media that refers to the state of affairs that you live in. Also, America is kind of just the center of the world when it comes to like where information comes from. Everyone in the world pays attention to American elections because let me tell you, folks, we complain about Iran, North Korea. If anyone ever goes stir crazy and fires nukes off and just fucking murks the entire planet, it's gonna be America. Okay, so people pay attention to what's going on here. Just this once, I thought it'd be nice to focus on something else. Guatemala. When was the last time you even thought about Guatemala? Um, uh, I I'm so used to having chat next to me. Um, well, look, it's difficult, I think, for American leftists, Americans in general, to talk about other countries because Americans are very specifically insulated from the global community um, in a way that other countries just aren't, There are tons of jokes about Americans being bad at geography, like we can't point out countries, and I'm bad at geography, so yeah, true. And there's stuff like that. And there's a reason for that. And part of it is poor education, and part of it is, cultural obliviousness, and part of it is sort of post-colonial arrogance. And part of it is, I think, a legitimate product of, again, America is a center of global affairs. So stuff going on in here reverberates around the whole world. We have our plates full. I felt like I've had my plate full with the American election, but stuff is going on elsewhere. In Guatemala, for example, here is the Congress on. Nope, don't you scroll up on me. On fire. Look at that. Wow. Look at them. They're having fun, huh? Well, they certainly seem like they're having fun. The gist of it, as I understand it, is this is the product of long-standing civil unrest following, austerity and inappropriate distribution of funds and government corruption, like a million things. Revolutions or setting Congress on fire. It's never started by just one thing, like ever. It's never just one thing, ever. Nowadays, especially nowadays, it's like a million things. Because back in the day, 400 years ago, you're a English Catholic in hiding, wanting to kill the queen or whatever, king. Ye back in the day, you know, how did you get your news? Well, obviously, they would send a suicide horse down into the English countryside. It would ride along the road with just a gigantic bag of newsprint on its back, and as it galloped, like little flyers would fly out. And they had no way to stop this horse. It would eventually crash into the wall or go off into the Atlantic. And the point is, you didn't get news very much back in those days. Nowadays, you Twitter feed, you hear about 5 new acts of corruption from the Trump administration every single morning. So back in the day, you had to concentrate on one or two or three major things, and that was how people got angry. And nowadays, I feel like the ready availability of information actually makes it more difficult to protest your government. You know, like with the Trump administration, they have relied on scandal after scandal after scandal, forcing you to forget about all of the previous ones. I mean, like the Ukrainian phone call, okay, but like, do you remember like everything, or like even a tenth of everything? The Trump administration is. I can't. I couldn't. It's my job to cover this stuff. I couldn't remember all of it. I'd have to like go back through like notes or something like that. There are websites dedicated to chronicling all this shit, and it can be overwhelming. And I think that sense of being overwhelmed is one of the reasons why a lot of Americans and especially lefties don't pay that much attention to what's going on in other countries. Again, I'm speaking from personal experience here. Look at this shit. How based is this? Again, it scrolls up Twitter every time I look over. How based is this? Can I get a pog rating on this? Imagine chats in the corner, they'd be pogging right now. They would say it's very pog. Sorry, I'm just staring and appreciating that. Fire sure is pretty, isn't it? Not to sound weird, right? I don't know. It's just like a pretty graphical effect. Look at all the billowing smoke and stuff. I don't know if anyone in there was hurt. I imagine not. Usually protests like these don't involve the loss of a human life until the police come in. Hey, we should pay attention to what's going on around the world. We may be dealing with this weird half pseudo coup here in America, but in a post Michael Brooks online leftist political forum, we don't have many people really repping foreign affairs. It's one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of Dylan Burns, 1776 over on Twitch or on Twitter, my foreign affairs correspondent, because in addition to him being some sort of freakishly intelligent young Jimmy Neutron-esque politics type, he really cares about what's going on in other countries, and I think we all should. Am I 100% familiar with the context behind this Guatemalan, protest? I'm genuinely not. But, well, it scrolls up every time. It must have bothered them quite a bit for things to have led to this point. I want to say something. One quick thing. Okay. Now, obviously, political violence is always wrong. You should never do violence. Ever. Ever. Thankfully, burning a building is not violence, not in the sense that I mean it, of course. It's property damage. Now, you could argue property damage is a type of violence, but then I would argue that property damage is a fundamentally replaceable type of damage. No matter how much you destroy something, it can be replaced, at least in function, if not necessarily in form. Unless we're dealing with some historical artifacts or I mean, okay. When we're talking about government buildings, we, and by we I mean humans, have a very long-standing tradition of doing terrible things to these buildings as part of some broader political effort to emancipate ourselves or to declare sovereignty over a power. And I think that's just lovely. What a lot of people don't know much about or don't think much about is the passive violence of the system they live in. And this has always frustrated me immensely, Take, for example, the opioid crisis. Or, no, COVID-19. That's topical. How many people got COVID-19 today? 200,000 in America alone? Like a third of the total of the planet? In a country with 4% of its population? COVID-19. How many people are dying of COVID-19? 1,000, 1,500 a day? It's like a 9/11 every 2 to 3 days. But, of course, Republicans cared about 9/11. They don't care about COVID-19 anywhere near as much. And I wonder why. Well, there's a quirk. This is a cultural thing, and I've even heard some people argue it's a linguistic thing. The way we structure our sentences prioritizes certain types of information over others. But we are obsessed with having people to blame, And as was the case with 9/11, 9/11 was a terrorist attack. It was done by people. COVID-19 wasn't done by people. It's a plague. I mean, these happen from time to time. And you'll find that the conservatives in this country are remarkably unconcerned with the death that is caused, in spite of the fact that it is quite evident that there are things the Trump administration could have done to have lessened those deaths. Now, as far as I'm concerned, if 200,000 people have died, and now it's about 250,000, when it was entirely possible that only 100,000 people could have died with proper management, as far as I'm concerned, those are 100,000 murders on the part of the Trump administration. And since we're not prosecuting any people, we don't need to be too specific with exactly at whose feet the blame lands, but the point stands nonetheless. I don't think that these are just natural accidents. These are products of deliberate human behavior. I mean, can you tell me the difference between a person in government who just neglectfully refuses to implement a policy that would save a life, or a quarter million. And somebody who walks by a drowning baby, child they're thrashing around, and refuses to do anything about it. We rightfully would call one a monster, but with regards to the policy, not so much. There is one case, however, where conservatives are suddenly enraged, just maddeningly enraged, by all the death done by COVID-19. And it's when they can blame China. That is the only context in which they are concerned with the loss of human life. And then they'll start saying things like a quarter million dead because of China. China lied, people died. That is when they get concerned. But when it's a product of neglectful or incompetent behavior on the part of their own administration, then it suddenly just becomes a natural disaster. It oscillates between a product of human incompetence or malice and an act of God whenever it's most convenient to them. And it just occurred to me that in all this rambling, I don't know if this is a product of me being a little sick, but I don't think I'm even remotely where the point was. The point was somewhere way over there, and I am just gleefully strolling over here, utterly unconcerned with the tangent that I'm going on. So before I somehow turn this into a fucking book review, I'm gonna wrap this up. I can do that now because I'm not streaming. I can just be like, hey, segment's done. Good luck and solidarity to the Guatemalan protesters. I do believe that protests such as these, even protests which lead to the destruction of government property, are justified because in essentially every case where there is protest against the government, there are instances in which the government has acted in such a way as to deserve those protests, and moreover, that their behavior has led to the deaths of innocent people. And that protesting them in this manner is infinitely less destructive than the consequences of allowing that government to continue doing what they're doing unabated. So, good luck to them. The riot police showed up just afterwards, by the way. Oh, just, you probably figured, but... What energy? Ha! Well, good luck to them. Yeah. Maybe in a little bit of time we can look at how these protests pan out and see if we can learn anything from them. Protests in America, I've always thought, are kind of pussy shit. Like in America, it seems like the overriding narrative of sort of liberal civility takes precedence. So, like even over in France, the yellow vest protest? They were a lot more aggressive, I think, than a lot of American protesters seem to be. We had like a good thing going for a little bit, I feel, with BLM, not with the riots and looting, I mean, but with this like overwhelming collective rejection of police brutality. But I feel like invariably things are going to, and they have died down somewhat. Um, it's really about keeping that energy going. But then America is America and Guatemala is Guatemala. So these are, they're very different countries culturally and historically. And, with regards to the severity of their police state and the way their media treats all this shit.